Falcons defense was totally torched on Sunday by Deshaun Watson and the Texans, leaving some to wonder how much longer does Dan Quinn have a job. Arthur Blank says no changes are planned for now, but how much longer can that last? We'll talk about it next on AJC Falcons News Now.
This is AJC Falcons News Now, sponsored by Miller Lite. Here are your hosts, Brandon Adams and former Atlanta Falcon Chuck Smith.
Oh, Chuck, things are not good.
No, not good at all.
Things are not good for the Falcons.
It's an understatement, bro.
That is the former Falcon Chuck Smith. My name is Brandon Adams. Welcome into AJC Falcons News Now, sponsored by Miller Lite. And we're going to give you a lot of chance to sound off today after the Falcons lose really in embarrassing fashion, 53-32 at the hands of the Houston Texans. And one of the things I hate about the game the most is I like Deshaun, man. I like Deshaun Watson. I'm not a Clemson fan, not even close. But, you know, I respected him in college. We joked about this a little bit on Friday. He's from my hometown. He seems to play the game the right way. You know, he just goes about his business the right way. I'd love nothing more than to be happy for Deshaun Watson. But when he's out there carving up the Falcons with a knife and a fork, man, I know for a lot of our audience, you can't be happy for him there in that regard. All you can think about is what Atlanta does not do really to stop him in any shape, form, or fashion. For a head coach who's also the defensive coordinator, you really couldn't have drawn up a storyline to work out worse for this. Quinn looks terrible after the game. As of right now, you got to say he's really just hanging on by a thread.
Well, you're right. And let's start off with Deshaun Watson. What else can you say? Incredible. Deshaun Watson looked like the best quarterback in the National Football League. I mean, literally, give him credit. And, you know, the really thing that I liked about Deshaun, you could just see his will and his drive. Had a bad game before that, right? But Deshaun Watson came out and embarrassed the Falcons. It just was stunning to me how many times Deshaun Watson had so much time, made great throws, and I'm sure we're going to tackle that in a minute. But Deshaun Watson, phenomenal.
Yeah, he really was. Very, very impressed with that. Now, we are going to get to in a moment, Falcons owner Arthur Blank spoke to Steve Hummer from the AJC. For now, Blank is standing beside his coaching staff. We'll get to that in a moment and give you a chance to sound off on all that. However, here today, I want to start with something different. I want you to hear from Deion Sanders, the former Falcon great, one of the most popular Falcons of all time. He has weighed in on this subject. We'll get to that as kind of a way of getting our conversation started today. Of course, it's all brought to you by Miller Lite, the official beer of the Atlanta Falcons. It tastes great. It's just 96 calories, and I know that many of you, as you're gathering around, and I'm sure you did this again yesterday, sitting around watching the Atlanta Falcons, toasting a little Miller Lite with the Falcons fans you enjoy watching the games with. It's always a great choice, and it's great to have Miller Lite, the official beer of the Falcons, as a part of AJC Falcons News Now, sponsored by Miller Lite. So let me start with this. Falcons fans may have heard the Blank stuff, and they may have read that in the AJC both last night and this morning, and they're left to wonder, okay, what does this mean? Well, I think, as Deion Sanders is going to explain here, a vote of confidence from Blank for now, Blank made it clear it was not a vote of confidence, but sticking beside Quinn for now doesn't necessarily mean that's always going to be the case. In fact, Deion Sanders, the great former Falcon and pretty provocative analyst, was on the NFL Network this morning, and he was saying that he thinks that sooner rather than later, Dan Quinn's going to be gone from Atlanta. Let me let you hear Deion Sanders talking about the current coach of his former team. Here's Deion.
Mr. Blank is a wonderful man. He has a commitment to excellence, but he expects a commitment to excellence. What he's getting right now, when you pull up to the stadium, it's already 30 points on the darn scoreboard because that's what your defense is surrendering each game. Now, how can you win with that? They gave up 50 today, man. So when an owner says you're fine, that's what he truly believes. He wants you to be fine. But you know who gets you fired? Not the owner. The fans and the media get you fired. Because with those seats, ain't no butts in them seats, and they start to be empty, and the chatter start going on. Now the team's starting to quit on you a little bit. Oh, it has to be a change. I do not believe that this coaching staff will remain past week 8.
So I think that's a strongly worded statement from Deion, and I think, frankly, one of the reasons why I wanted to play that to begin our program here today from the NFL Network this morning is because I think that's what the Falcon fans want to hear. You know, there's a certain lack of passion with the way that Falcons players speak, and sometimes, you know, Quinn publicly speaks as well. It almost seems like there's a robotic cadence to the rhythm of the words. I think Falcons fans are actually craving to hear someone be as passionate about the topic as Deion is. Now, Deion's a former Falcon now, but he still, you know, loves and cares this team. I would say it may be, you know, Deion's favorite team in the entire league. Right. And to hear Deion echoing the sentiments of fans, I think there's a lot of fans they're just glad to hear that from one of their all-timers.
Yeah, and I agree. And
You
one
too,
of the
by
things,
the way.
yeah, one of the things that I talked about last week, going back, it wasn't necessarily the losses that's going to get him fired, but when you saw the fans 2 weeks ago at the Benz, that's one of the things that Arthur Blank despised members. It's all about the fans. He wanted a great fan experience, and what the fans are not having when they're at the Benz or on the road now is a good experience. I agree with Deion. This team, it just doesn't have that. Who is that? We talk about that alpha dog. I talk about it all the time. Who's going to come out and challenge the team? You know, you hear a lot about what Dan is saying outside of, outside the locker room, but Dan started to look old. I mean, Dan aged about 10 years yesterday. I was looking at Dan aged, but Deion is right. Dan Quinn and his staff, they're not going to make it. Families could be moving.
Yeah, I think that's very true. And, for Falcons fans, it's really the only relevant conversation to be had right now because, as Deion said, you run the risk of complete and total apathy setting in. Chuck, you've been around not just as a player, but around the Atlanta sports team for a long time as a media guy, and, you've covered a lot of teams in all various sports. There's nothing worse than when the apathy sets in. There's nothing worse when I don't care about these guys. There's nothing worse than when that feeling calcifies here. And that's obviously what this organization has to be kind of butting up against right now of you've got to be able to provide a little something that what Deion just showed you there. A little bit of, I'm mad and I care. I'm mad not because things are so bad. I'm mad because I care. Deion's given Falcons fans some of that right there. That's what they want to hear, and that's really the only relevant conversation. At this point in time, I realize there have been teams who have come back from worse deficits than this make the playoff. Be that as it may, I don't believe Quinn's job is salvageable. It's just a matter of when this happens, not now. Deion predicts it happens by week 8, but that's the only relevant conversation. At this point in time, it is impossible for me to envision Dan Quinn returning for 2020. So it's simply a matter now of when does it happen? When does Atlanta move on from him? Because the argument for Quinn, there's simply no evidence on that side anymore.
So to me, Brandon, it comes down to also who's connected to this. Because if you talk about Dan Quinn, personnel is huge in this conversation. Thomas Dimitroff, there's going to be questions for him to answer. You understand what I'm saying? Because when you look at the personnel who we've been sold on, they're ready. They're Pro Bowlers. They're young. They're in their prime. And it comes down to him and Dan who's making those decisions. So a total evaluation of the right now of the program, how they develop players, right? I need to know what's happening because the players aren't responding. But is it scheme? I know it's a lot of scheme, messing up, but are our players really as good as we think? Is the roster as good as we have been sold on from the evaluation from Thomas and organization?
Well, I'm going to give you credit for this because you've been saying this to me off the air since the beginning of the season. And a lot of times I've kind of pushed back on you because I really believe that coming into the year, Atlanta's roster was in pretty good shape. And so when you would say, and you have said this a couple times, as we kind of sit here and just kind of chat before the show begins, is this roster as good as we've been led to believe it is? You've said that a couple times. All of a sudden now, the stuff you've been saying to me off the air for a while seems like a lot more relevant conversation to be had on the air there as well. Because overall, I think the roster is better than the on-field performance is, which kind of points the finger at coaching, maybe more so. But in terms of the salary cap, hell, this team's going to be in a couple of years, and that is coming like a freight train on the other end of the tracks right now. When you look at some of that kind of stuff, I mean, it's hard not to point the finger at Dimitroff on some of that, especially when Dimitroff got to sit there on the dais with all the other suits and ties and point the finger of blame solely at Mike Smith going back 2014. The fact that he got to turn his, look down on a coach being fired before, I guess you are left to wonder if Quinn really is eventually on his way out. And we'll, as I said before, we'll let you hear and see what Blank said about that yesterday and coming up in a couple of minutes. But if it really is, the end is near for Quinn. I mean, what is the argument in favor of Thomas Dimitroff being salvaged again after another coach gets fired?
Right now, to me, there is no argument. I think the Falcons need to go in a different direction. I think this is the nucleus of what we got. But is this the nucleus to win a Super Bowl? I don't know. But I will tell you this, as I look at the guys on defense, and I'm not going to talk about offense right now because we got to focus on defense. When I look at Tack, when I look at Vic, they're not really NFL starters. At Philadelphia, they don't even start. Let's be real. At San Fran, they're not starters, so it is what it is. Again, and everybody's been sitting again. Grady Jarrett, good player. Grady been getting the pass now. When Grady been, what has Grady Jarrett really done? Let's call us, everybody, what's happening is we're looking and hoping. Grady's a good player. Grady is not a great player, and good is good enough. Good is good enough to help you get there, right? So look at the other guys. Deion Jones got ran over yesterday by a wide receiver. All right, look at Desmond Trufant. Look at Isaiah Oliver. Right now, a lot of these players, think about it. They're not starters on the good teams.
Yeah.
They're not. So right now, to me, when you look at the evaluation of the players, Thomas Dimitroff has to be held accountable in the entire system. I know we like the New England Patriots type of system, but it has to change. And not a shot at any of those guys. Some of those guys are below average. Then you got some of them that are good. And the only reason I say that, look at the film.
Yeah.
Look at the film. Quit making excuses for these guys, man. You got to make plays or you're evaluated by what you do.
I think the schedule coming up for Atlanta is very interesting here. First of all, Atlanta's going to stay west for right now. They're, to my understanding, not coming back home after Houston. They're going to stay in Arizona, which you guys did this sometimes when you played.
Yeah.
If you've got these two, like, Houston's not West Coast, but if you've got these two sort of Western trips, back-to-back weeks, you kind of stay out there.
We did that too, especially as we was getting our butts beat. But back to you. it was set up just timing just perfectly. But I'm gonna leave that right there. I'm gonna leave that right there.
It does make you wonder, though, would the situation be different if Atlanta wasn't going from Houston straight to Arizona? If they were coming back to Flowery Branch first, you kind of wonder about that. But then after that, schedule is really tough, and I know nobody wants to hear this. But it's true. You got back-to-back home games against the Rams and Seahawks, and neither one of those are gimmies. You got an off week for Week 9, and then it's at Saints, who keep winning, at Panthers, who I thought looked pretty good yesterday again there as well.
Wow, really
so you got a tough stretch of games here coming up, and that may be what the Falcons have in mind in terms of the status for Quinn right now, at least holding on to his job. But to go back to Deion Sanders here for a moment, speaking of that off week, Deion was pretty pointed on the NFL Network about what he thinks that means. Here's Deion again.
Bye may mean bye. Bye may mean bye for real. I'm not joking. I'm not, because I hate seeing, I've been through this several times in my career. I hate seeing coaches get terminated because you have to uproot everybody. I hate it. Well, but this may happen. This is bad, man.
I know you played
30
for 5
a game.
teams.
You're giving up 30 a game?
So
it's tough.
Yeah.
The families involved. I've talked about it a couple times. You hate that, but Deion's correct. It is a lot of people get punished when you lose.
Which is serious business, but Deion's also funny as well. Bye
Deion's
means
funny.
bye. Bye may mean bye.
Deion is hilarious now.
Yeah.
I mean,
all right, so we'll let you hear from Arthur Blank here in a moment. I agree with you. There are families on the other side of this, and that's why nobody's going to like jump up and down, and be happy about any kind of news like this. But there's there's a lot invested here. The NFL is a serious league, and right now no one's more unhappy about that than the people at the very top of the organization, the Atlanta Falcons. So let's let a lot of folks weigh in here, and we'll give a lot of folks a chance to say what they want to say. Joe Johnson says, bye week, bye please, when it comes to Dan Quinn. Michael Williams says, literally on defense, we cut everyone but Grady and Deion, and we wouldn't be as bad with random players. So Michael kind of pointing to the fact that there are a lot of guys in this defense who are getting nothing done. Now, you may say that's based on some scheme stuff, and we're going to get to that in a moment because there's some other guys around the league sounding off about the Falcons scheme here today. So we'll get to that. We're going to get there. But as Michael says, it's also a situation where you look beyond Grady, beyond Deion, two guys who I think are part of the solution. Keanu Neal, when healthy, I think he's part of the solution. Beyond that, man, you're left to wonder, who's really out there getting it done?
I know the media said the Falcons had the third best roster lineup, and every year we've heard that.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? But let me just say this. I understand what they're saying, but right now, again, those guys are good players. We don't have anybody right now that's on that, to me, right now, playing like a Pro Bowler. No one. But I'll tell you this, the Atlanta Falcons, the guys like Trufant, some of those guys, shame on y'all, man. Y'all playing cover 3 yesterday.
Yeah.
You guys can't get up and press. You can't make plays. But now I'm going to just say this. The coverage that Dan Quinn and this defense has put together, the zone scheme, and not to be able to make adjustments yesterday, there were no adjustments. They tried to play cover 2. He came out publicly and said, well, we're in cover 2. We know exactly where the holes are. Guys aren't doing what they need to do. So to me, the recipe started a little bit in the scheme. Because they're playing a base, sit back, and let's just see what happens. The bend don't break. They was broken a gang of times. I agree. No, the coverage, and this is basic coverage. But again, this ain't the Legion of Boom. You don't have Sherman. You don't have all those guys out there. They didn't really have a chance yesterday. Somewhat with scheme, but right now them cats can't play. A lot of them guys, like you said, Grady, maybe Deion.
You got to say Deion.
Name me a big play Deion made. Give me one big play Deion jump. I'm not trying to play TV. All I do is the eye in the sky. Name me 3 big plays that Deion Jones has made this year.
Yeah.
Debo, can you visualize?
No, I can't.
He had a tackle for loss the other day. Then he embarrassed the family. Got ran over by what's the receiver's name? I don't know. Fuller. One of them. He got deep drop shoulder. That's just stuff that just don't happen. But I'm just saying, name it. I bet you can name 3 plays that Devondre Campbell made.
Yeah, no, that's true.
And they're 3 negative. 2 of them was yesterday when he gave up touchdown man to man.
Yeah, no,
those aren't the highlights we need.
Yeah, listen, no doubt about that. All right, more of the comments. Justin Glaze says, "Hey, it's my first time watching the show. First of all, Justin, thanks so much for being with us." He says, "Who would be available as coach if Dan is fired?" I think that's a very fair question to start asking. Now, I've been saying it for a while. I'm
you got him. Go ahead and give it to him.
I'm going to say this again. Let me write this down right here.
Give it to
Here's
him.
my thing right here. It's stinking for Lincoln. That's what I want.
He's calling it.
That's what I want to see the Falcons do. I want to see them stinking for Lincoln. That's what I'm looking for here. Lincoln Riley is the number 1 name on my list. There's not anybody below that for me that even comes close. You're going to hear about Josh if they do make a move on Quinn eventually, if that eventually happens, you're going to hear a name like Josh McDaniels get thrown around. I don't trust Josh McDaniels.
No,
Josh McDaniels got hired by the Indianapolis Colts, a pretty good second chance as a head coach after he flamed out in Denver. McDaniels flamed out down the drain in Denver, got a second chance with Indianapolis, a pretty good roster situation, and he turned his back on that team. He went back to New England to be offensive coordinator. That's his own business as to why he did that. I don't want McDaniels here. I want Lincoln Riley. There's going to be a arms race to go out and get Lincoln Riley. But for as much money as Atlanta's already spent on its offense, why not spend the money then to get the offensive-minded coach who's going to be probably more adept at pushing those buttons than anybody else would be? The race begins and ends for Lincoln Riley. Anybody else that's not Riley, and I do believe that Riley's going to take an NFL job at some point in time, anybody that's not Riley is a distant second place.
I want to get your boy, Kirby Smart.
No, don't even play around with stuff like that. Kirby,
hey, Georgia fans about to jump through that on camera.
Kirby's happy. Kirby's at his alma mater. Kirby's happy.
Kirby, come to the league.
Stop doing that.
Georgia fan, look now, somebody.
Y'all got to realize Chuck's a Tennessee grad.
Somebody tweeting right now. Chuck Smith said, hey, man, Kirby's going to the Falcons. Kirby. I'm
Stop
sorry,
doing
Georgia
that.
Sorry, Georgia fans. I'm just joking. All
right, here's a good name, too. Now, I would listen to this guy. Jonathan Burwell says, what about Eric Bieniemy, who's the offensive coordinator at Kansas City Chiefs?
Does he have enough experience? He's
at this point in time, you got guys who are essentially children.
He's the OC, though.
Yeah, he's the OC. He's the Chiefs' offensive coordinator. Like Bieniemy, now Andy Reid's always going to have a lot of control over his offense, but Bieniemy is one of those up-and-coming names. But given the fact that he's only a coordinator, Lincoln Riley's the head coach, Bieniemy doesn't come close to being as. What are you doing?
Hey, B, I like Eric Bieniemy, but my thing is, part of this Falcons, to me, what's going to happen with the Falcons, I want an older guy. This is going to take some little seasoning on it now.
Well, if you want an older guy, you got Mike McCarthy out there, former Packers coach.
I ain't got a problem with him.
No, stop it. I don't want McCarthy.
Wait a minute, what is old school dead?
I don't want McCarthy. I want Lincoln
Riley. I like Lincoln Riley. And you know what, Eric Bieniemy, just messing around here. Because, look, the Falcons getting beat now. Yeah. Got to have a little fun. But
listen, you got to keep it. You got to have a little fun.
I'm giving an uneducated opinion on Eric Bieniemy.
All right. So let me say this. Now, the news, we're giving our opinions about what would happen if Atlanta does fire Dan Quinn. I'll give you my opinion. They need to, and eventually they're going to. But that's my opinion. The news, though, as reported from Houston yesterday, and really good work here by Steve Hummer, the columnist of the AJC, who caught up with Falcons owner Arthur Blank. Blank, for now, says he's got no plans to make any kind of move against Quinn or anybody else in the organization. Let me read Steve Hummer here for a moment. So in his column, Hummer writes, asked if he was contemplating any big change at the top of the Falcons organizational chart, Blank answered no. There are a lot of games left in this season. The staff has performed at a much higher level in the past, and these players have too. My hope and my belief is that they can find a way to remix the puzzle and have a different answer in terms of results. That's Falcons owner Arthur Blank being quoted by Steve Hummer. We'll actually get to that in we'll get more on Blank here in just a second. That's Steve Hummer there quoting Blank on that. So Blank's not ready to make the move now. The only thing I'm going to nitpick with Blank on in that statement he says is this staff has been successful in the past. I'm not trying to just not give anybody credit. I'm not trying to basically throw salt in the wound here. If you go back and look at 2016 though, The only thing to me that seemed to propel the Atlanta Falcons win the NFC, based on the results currently in San Francisco, the results currently in Atlanta, if Kyle Shanahan's not your offensive coordinator in 2016, you are not getting the success, because Falcons coaching staff, pretty much the same group minus Shanahan, and never match that again. Not with Steve Sarkisian, not with Dirk Cutter right now. You caught lightning in a bottle with a very good offensive coordinator. He was destined to be a head coach from the word go. He moved on, and now San Francisco, they're going to play tonight. That's actually one of the better teams in the NFC right now because they've got a sharp and offensive minded head coach. The success for 2016, as much as Shanahan I'll never understand why he ran the ball or did not run the ball at the end of the Super Bowl. But prior to that moment, he had been brilliant for the Falcons. The NFC Championship, that belongs to Shanahan. I'm not sure how much of Dan Quinn's DNA is on that NFC Championship. I'm just not.
Well, that's a good point because he got the most out of this incredible offense. What were they averaging, 30 plus, something like that? But, Shanahan, there's something to be said there. But I want to talk about with Arthur Blank. Good job by Steve Hummer on that article. I mean, it's deep, too. I was surprised Arthur Blank went as in detailed as he did. As you get further down the article, I was really surprised Arthur, and some of the things he said, I thought I read in there, he's kind of challenging them and just basically saying, I'm going to give you you have 1% maybe. You got a small chance to turn this around, or it might, I might fire you anyway. That's kind of what I read.
Let's show another quote from Blank here from this story, because I think that Chuck's right. I think that Blank, to his credit, was pretty outspoken about his feelings here. He says, obviously, his faith, being rattled right now, and I'm sure our fans feel that way. This is an organization, starting with the head coach and the general manager, who know how to fight, and they know how to fight back. They don't know how to lose. They know how to win. They are tenacious. They are not going to lay down. Hopefully it will be good enough to have a respectable performance the rest of the season. That's Arthur Blank, as quoted in the AJC, going back after yesterday in Houston. So from that standpoint, you're right. It's a pretty candid Blank saying, I've got faith, but my faith is rattled now the same way it would be for fans. I actually don't have a problem with that statement at all. If this is the move you're making for now, which is the owner, it's his choice to do, but if this is the move you're making for now, good for him for at least addressing what we all know is going on.
I got respectable. Yeah. And when I look at that last sentence, respectable kind of stands out to me. Because think about this. When he's saying respectable, to me, what I took from that, he wants the team to do their best so we don't completely get embarrassed down the second half of the season. But I'm still going to clean slate. Yeah. That's what I took from that.
Well, a couple things that Blank said in there is that, our buddy James Bryant in our comment section mentioned the idea of a vote of confidence. In this particular case, Blank made it very clear at the end of the column. We don't have this quote to show you, but you can read it for yourself at AJC.com. Blank made it very clear that it wasn't a vote of anything, because Steve Hummer asked him, so is this a vote of confidence for Quinn in sports? We kind of know what that means. The vote of confidence is like the thing that happens right before.
Steve, you was trying to get that out of him. That was a good call.
Blank says, no, it's not a vote of anything. I'm just sharing my feelings. He did cite the Indianapolis Colts from last year, which I believe started 1-5 and still made the playoffs. I haven't seen any evidence that's going to happen for Atlanta, but maybe Colts fans would have said the same thing about their team a year ago. Here's the thing I'll say about Blank, and it's not my job to carry the water for the Falcons here. It's my job just to be honest about my feelings. The performance on the field is horrible right now. I think Quinn bears a lot of responsibility for that. Thomas Dimitroff, the personnel that's on this field, Dimitroff may hold some responsibility for that as well. But the one thing I'm going to say to the complimentary here is, I believe that Arthur Blank is an owner that does have the mentality of his fan base in mind. I think that Blank is really good at responding to fans. Now, the response doesn't always lead to success, which maybe you blame him for, maybe you don't. But this is not one of these owners that sits up in some ivory tower, 10,000 feet away and just kind of bathes himself in money and never listens to the feelings of casual fans. Arthur Blank listens even more so now than maybe before, because he knows he's got this big stadium that a lot of folks are a little touchy about when it comes to the ticket situation. But Blank, I believe, has always been a pretty responsive owner when it comes to the interests of fans. And I trust him on behalf of the fans in this regard here as well. I honestly don't know if you gain anything by firing Quinn after that game or not. It'd feel good for some Falcons fans today, but in terms of making the season more salvageable or making it more likely to hire Lincoln Riley, I don't know that axing Quinn today necessarily gets that. What I will say is that in terms of responding to the desires of fans and their level of dissatisfaction right now, I do think we've got a little bit of a backstory and a track record when it comes to Arthur Blank, that he's actually pretty good at doing some of that kind of stuff. So I wouldn't expect the Falcons fans' complaints. You can look at our comment section right now and see an endless list of them. I really, if you're a Falcons fan, wouldn't expect your complaints to fall on deaf ears when it comes to Blank, even if he's not making the move you want to see him make right now.
Well, I think so also, but I think he understands that you can't just make some irrational decision because there are a lot of, remember, this involves with money. This has to do with sponsors. There are a lot of things involved in this, but let me just say this, Arthur Blank, you talk about the kind of man he is. Don't think he don't have consulting behind those doors. Mm-hmm. One name that I'm going to throw out there who he gets help from, he's smart for keeping these kind of guys as part of his organization, Rich McKay, former general manager. Believe me, he has different people that talk and understand the game, so Arthur is going to make an educated decision, but he's got guys that are going to give him information. I'll tell you that.
All right, we're going to hear from Falcons coach Dan Quinn in a moment. Before that, though, speaking of the great coverage of the AJC, if you're a Falcons fan and you love to kind of find out what's going on with the team, even days like this when the news isn't good, you want to know the latest news when it happens. The best way to stay up to date on everything happening with Falcons coverage is to become an AJC subscriber. The Steve Hummer column we just quoted from, you can read that both in print and online at AJC.com and get even more great stuff. D. Orlando Ledbetter with the team yesterday in Houston, with the team, I guess, as it heads towards Arizona this Sunday, back in Flowery Branch once they get there. Get that kind of in-depth Falcons coverage from the AJC. Become a subscriber. Let me show you the website on the screen there. It's subscribe.ajc.com/Falcons News Now. When you go to that website, you're going to have a number of choices. You can get the daily e-paper, you can get e-paper Sunday print, you can get the 7-day print, and really among all those choices, of course you can cancel anytime, but among all those choices, as a special thank you to you, we've got this Atlanta Falcons branded cooler. The AJC is a proud partner of the Atlanta Falcons, and this cooler with the Falcons logo is a great way to not only show your support for the Falcons, but also our way of saying thanks to you for being an AJC subscriber. So go to the website, subscribe.ajc.com/Falcons News Now, and you can get in on a great offer and a really cool Falcons cooler. All right, let me do a lot of comments. And Chuck, I'm going to try to go through some of these as fast as we can because I know a lot of folks are really weighing in heavy here. John White says our defense just needs to man up, pin their ears back and blitz, rotate players frequently, and live with the results at this point. I know you hate three-man rushes.
Ooh,
I feel like I saw some of that yesterday.
I know you want to run through these callers.
Yeah,
it's going to take me a little longer.
No, people want to hear you talk about this.
Okay, well, listen. That call when they threw a touchdown, what was it, 3rd and 1? Or was it 4th and 1?
No, yeah.
Third, somewhere in the end of the game when they threw that touchdown, three-man rush means first down because you got 3 against 5. And the Falcons, I could not believe in this play they didn't send pressure. They hadn't gotten any pass rush all day. They had Vic Beasley and Takk McKinley dropping to nowhere land. Mm-hmm. Both of those guys, if you go back and watch, they literally dropped back 5 yards and they jumped in the air. Terrible, terrible decision. You got 8 in coverage, 3 guys rushing. That call by Dan Quinn absolutely was the worst call that I've seen a D coordinator make here in a long, long time. Why are you paying these guys?
Yeah.
But for them to rush 3, and look, they were the jumbo guys. They had the hippos in.
Yeah.
They didn't even have Adrian Claiborne in on this last rush. Terrible decision. The 3-man rush is absolutely, with those guys dropping, was a terrible call. I agree with you, caller.
Michael Tillman says, fire Quinn, hire defensive coordinator, make Cutter interim head coach, start making direct deposits to Lincoln Riley's bank account. I agree with you on the Riley thing. I would love to see one of those rumors fire up sooner rather than later. But if you make the move on Quinn, I mean, you got Raheem Morris. He can run the defense, right?
Well, yeah, you got guys that can run the defense. Dan Quinn, I mean, they are who they are. They're a base 4-3 team that runs cover 2 and cover 3. Simple as that.
Chris Mize, this is a good question. Chris says, why is Quinn running such a vanilla defense this year? So I guess I would ask you, I mean, and we're going to hear Quinn later on talk about the change they made in the offseason to combat the rushing quarterbacks like Deshaun Watson they saw yesterday. But, I mean, why is Atlanta running the defensive scheme that it's running, if you had to guess?
Well, number one, Quinn talked about giving more pressure, but a lot of this had to do with Vic Beasley and Takk McKinley. Vic and Takk can't play in a down situation. You got defensive ends that are too small and not athletic enough to play down or strong enough to play in the 4-man front. So what Dan did, he came out and said, okay, we're going to have 5 up front. We're going to stand Vic and Takk up as outside backers. But guess what? They're not outside backers. They're guys who put their hands in the dirt, so they're going to be at a disadvantage, Brandon, automatically. So Dan put that in because they couldn't stop the run to help those guys, right?
Yeah.
But then you got 3 guys in the middle. Grady's the only one you know. The 2 other guys, they can't rush. Right now, they can only stop the run. That's what happened. But let me just tell you this. Dan Quinn made a catastrophic mistake going from a 4-man front to a 3-4 when he didn't understand that scheme like he should. This ain't Rex Ryan. Mm-hmm. You don't have that kind of personnel. Neither does Dan have that kind of experience. But you went from a 3-4 to a 4-3. Yeah. You took Vic Beasley, put him as outside backer. He's never done it, even at Clemson. Takk McKinley is down. Let me tell you something else what you notice. Why are you standing up? Why are you guys standing up, man?
Yeah.
They're standing up, getting off the ball slow.
As opposed to being a three-point stand.
Yeah, man. I mean, Dan made a catastrophic change. And I talked about it earlier in the year. You go to a 3-4, when your players aren't built for it, you just put it together hoping that they'd be able to thrive.
Chuck Charles says if you hire Lincoln Riley, you're going to be in the same spot 5 years from now. Jermel Malone says we don't want a college coach, especially in the Big 12. Here's the thing, though, Jermel. The entire NFL is the Big 12 now. I mean, the entire NFL is the Big 12. What do you think? What do you think LA Rams are doing with
Arizona winning?
Yeah, Arizona. You'll see next week. They hired a failed Big 12 coach. I'm trying to get the Falcons to hire at least the best coach in the Big 12. Cliff Kingsbury got fired from Texas Tech, and he got hired by the Arizona Cardinals. Look at what Carolina's having success with McCaffrey at running back right now. That's at least a Big 12 way of using a running back. Saints, the way they use Alvin Kamara, that's kind of a Big 12 way of using a running back. The entire NFL has essentially adopted the Big 12, and you might as well get in on it with at least the best coach from the Big 12.
Okay, so you're a college guy, and I'm going to throw out a person.
Right.
Who's that? The offensive guy that the LSU's got now that was in the NFL with the Saints.
Oh, Joe Brady.
Hey, Joe Brady, OC.
Yeah.
I don't know who the head guy is, but look.
Yeah, he's there. So, like, Steve Ensminger is the offensive coordinator, but Joe Brady came from the Saints to run the passing game. That's actually a pretty interesting idea because that LSU offense is flying right now.
And they're basically the
Their defense is not very good, but their LSU offense is flying.
This is, man, I can't believe we're still talking about this pass thing because guess what? Guess who we ain't talking about?
Y'all Google Joe Brady. That's a pretty interesting name.
I like him.
I couldn't pick him out of a lineup. I couldn't tell you
I couldn't remember his name.
one thing about him. I couldn't tell you if he's tall or short. I couldn't tell you anything about him. But he seems to be doing pretty good with Joe Burrow down there.
Exactly. But think about this, B. Who ain't we talking about? Let's just think about it for a minute. Who haven't we talked about this whole show?
Talking about Ryan?
Julio Jones.
Oh, he had 3 catches yesterday, right?
I mean, to me, this is crazy. So I'm with you 100% on basically getting an offensive coordinator, an offensive-minded guy. I ain't got a problem with it. I understand that. Because if it can do something for Julio Jones, there is no way in the world, seriously, that Julio Jones yesterday, my wife, and she cooking. My wife in the kitchen talking about, honey, I ain't heard Julio's name.
Oh,
okay,
no.
but that was at the beginning of the game. Okay,
when the
hold
wife's
up.
shouting that from the kitchen, the offensive game plan has gone wrong.
Right, so the wife went to cook. She was cooking. Then she went to the back room to make up the bed. She said, babe, I ain't heard nothing from Julio Jones. Babe, hey, Julio Jones, I mean, golly, come on, man.
Well, and this is, by the way,
on, man.
and I know some people are going to be confused because if they ever make a move on Quinn, the bad defense is going to be the reason why they do it. But the reason why I am just dead set, they've got to hire an offensive-minded coach. First of all, it's the NFL in 2019. Look around. Second of all, if you've got this guy that we started the season with the announcement of, hey, we just gave him a $66 million contract extension, and now you're talking about him getting 3 catches in the game where you needed every point you could get because, as Deion said, you gave up 50 on the other side. At that point in time, you got to get more from Julio Jones than that. That's why you need an offensive-minded head coach.
Yeah, I'm going to tell you this right now. Dirk Cutter, it ain't working. How can you say it's working? I mean, what is something going to change overnight? I know you said he could move up to be the head coach.
Right.
But right now, I mean, there is no.
He's not. Listen, Dirk Cutter's not the future of the Falcons.
Well, we need somebody to get through the season.
We talked about that on Friday. Yeah. Right now, they're not throwing successfully out of 3 wide receiver sets. They had a vulnerability against Tennessee, who had given up some passing yardage against big personnel, and they didn't throw enough out of that. I mean, Warren Sharp had those numbers. That's an example of, the best offensive coordinators are exploiting weaknesses. I know Kansas City lose last night, but they find the vulnerabilities of these teams and they exploit those weaknesses, exploit them. And Atlanta just doesn't have that edge right now. They're not doing that. And what Sean Payton does with the Saints, the way that he's gotten the most out of Teddy Bridgewater, the way that that's just not what Atlanta's getting offensively. Offense not the reason why they lost yesterday, but it's the reason why as an organization right now they're not going as far as they should. Well,
you're exactly right. Let me just give a good though. Caleb McGarry, he handled J.J. Watt yesterday. Now J.J. got a sack. Caleb McGarry at tackle. I watched him almost every play. There are a few times J.J. was worn out. I love it. One time J.J. rushed, he fell down, and McGarry just smashed on him. Caleb McGarry is the real deal. He did a good job if you go back and watch Falcon fans, but he did an excellent job yesterday, I thought. In the offensive line, they were solid. The backs couldn't pick nobody up. Edo Smith got 2 holding calls, got ran over a couple times. The offensive line, they had a solid day, but the backs and tight ends struggled when it came to the pressure.
We're going to have a lot more comments to come. It's AJC Falcons News Now. It's sponsored by Miller Lite, the official beer of the Atlanta Falcons. Make sure you check out Miller Lite. Watch a little Monday Night Football tonight. A better game we probably saw from Atlanta on Sunday. Miller Lite, a great choice there for that. Can I hear Dan Quinn? Quinn, I don't know what he's supposed to say at this point in time, but obviously he's as disappointed as anybody but from the performance yesterday. Here is Quinn on that topic.
You really want to have pride in your performance and what you're doing and the preparation that goes into it. So I told the team, this past week, wins don't happen by accident. And you've got to earn them. You've got to do right in how we're doing it. And so when we don't, those are the results. And so that's, the intent of focus. We have to do less to get it right. We will. But no doubt backs against the wall and gut check time for us. But, all across the board, whether it's, disappointed in our performance tonight.
So I hate it for him. I mean,
that's old B-roll, though. Mike got that old B-roll. Man, DQ ain't looked that young. And
Chuck said he's been aging a little bit lately. But here's the thing, though. I'm not going to trash Dan Quinn. He's not the right coach for this team right now, I don't believe. But I've never had any indication he's anything other than a good guy. I think if he's out in Atlanta, either during the year or by the end of the year, he's going to coach again somewhere else at some point in time.
Oh, fast. Really fast, yeah.
It's just not working right now, but I'm not going to trash the guy. I'm really not. I mean, I've said this before. I don't like the catchphrase. I don't like the T-shirts. That kind of stuff sort of wears thin on me after a while. I'm assuming players are probably tired of it there as well. But, I mean, Dan Quinn's not embarrassing as an organization. He's not going to go out there and, act a fool or anything like that. I hate that he's forced to stand up there yesterday and kind of try to give answers for something right now that he just doesn't have answers for. This situation, I just believe, is over his head. I believe he's just not capable of fixing it. But he's not a bad guy, though.
It's a terrible feeling. No, yeah. Dan's not a bad guy. And again, you got to handle it the way he's handling it right now because he is the coach. But when you think about the challenges of when you lose, when there are no answers, it's the most frustrating thing ever. I mean, it's like you're just sad. It's like you just sit down when you have no answers. You have nothing. You get a pit in your stomach. Yeah. And here's the crazy part about it. As a player, you carry that pit in your stomach all week. It doesn't change. This is your job. Yeah. Remember, you're living your job through everybody's social media. The world is watching you. They're calling you losers. Can you imagine every day you come in here, B, and you look at the news and they say you're a loser. Right. And the family, and it's so hard on the family.
All I have to do is look at my Twitter feed to see that.
No, you need to stop.
But I know what you mean, though.
Yeah,
it's tough.
You know what I'm saying.
It's tough, and they're going to try to circle the wagons, and that's what they're going to try to do. Charles says that Quinn's the king of catchphrases is probably too much. That's probably true. Jack Stroud says, I think the defensive line is okay. It's the defensive backs that are terrible. If you're going to make the comparison one or the other, Jack's probably right. This secondary, man, the Keanu O'Neal injury certainly doesn't help with that. That's a group that's really struggling.
It was absolutely embarrassing watching those guys. They can't play basic coverage. They were busting calls. Isaiah Oliver, again, right now he's not an NFL starter. What happened to Desmond Trufant? Well, dreams when we drafted him. Yeah. I mean,
and he probably paid off on that for a while. I mean, Trufant seemed like I don't know that he ever quite rose to the level of being like a blue chip player in the league, but he was certainly an upper third cornerback probably.
Yeah. Huh?
I mean, at one point probably.
I mean, he was again. Yeah. He was good. To me, none of those guys have reached greatness. Deion Jones, the year of the Super Bowl, he reached greatness. But Devondre Campbell, remember, he came with a lot of hoopla right now. Let me tell you something else and switching gears real quick. I don't know if you noticed, Devondre Campbell moved. If they had him at the 3-4 outside backer, had Vic Beasley on the bench. Devondre Campbell, they had him at the 3-4. Another look that they gave because Vic again couldn't, set the edge. But tough times. I mean, everybody's catching it right now.
James Davis says make a trade, get Jalen Ramsey and move Oliver inside. Listen, I love Jalen Ramsey as a player. I know there's been a lot of talk about him being, I guess, available on the open market here. He's certainly wanted out of Jacksonville. Here's the thing, though. Beyond the Dan Quinn stuff, when you start evaluating the future of Thomas Dimitroff, my biggest problem with Atlanta as an organization is this. They are a trade-up, pay-up culture. They trade up in the draft. They pay up sometimes in free agency more than I probably want. If you look at the best teams in this league, they're a trade-down, pay-down type of team where by the time you're ready to cash in that big free agent contract, it's time for you to go do that somewhere else. I mean, New England's a perfect example of this. New England doesn't pay anybody. New England doesn't even pay Tom Brady. I mean, he's restructured his deal down over and over and over again. I think if you want to be among the best organizations in the NFL, like the Jalen Ramsey names and all those guys out there that you might be able to get and mortgage the future for, you gotta let it go. You gotta draft Jalen Ramsey. Whoever the 2020 version of Jalen Ramsey is, you gotta draft him. you've got to trade down, you've got to collect picks, you've got to be very judicious with your free agent dollars. Inexpensive, small dollar, big impact players. That's what the best teams do. They don't go out there and, win the free agency, headlines, the trade up draft headlines. You don't do that. I mean, I love Julio as much as anybody. I mean, and obviously Julio's going to be one of the greatest Falcons of all time. But the idea of the way the Falcons got Julio, mortgage in the future, a bunch of draft picks and stuff like that, that is not the way forward. You got to become a trade down, pay down type of team.
Well, again, they have missed some guys, but let me just – Aaron Donald. The Falcons had a chance to draft Aaron Donald. Yeah. Aaron Donald was one of my clients, and I'll put it out there. I went to them cats and said, hey, man, y'all need to get Aaron Donald. Mm-hmm. I told Brian Cox, and me and Brian had a conversation. He's the D-line coach. I said, Brian, Aaron Donald is special. What you guys – we just talking at the Senior Bowl. Know what needs to happen? You guys need to change the defense, draft Aaron Donald, build everyone around him. It's a fact. It is. It's a fact. Mm-hmm. It's a fact. So it didn't happen. So also another guy they should have possibly got that I went and told these cats, Yannick Ngakoue from Jacksonville. Absolute stud. Mm-hmm. Stephon Tuitt. Yeah. I mean, I'm not name dropping. It's a fact. And it's well documented. The Falcons had opportunities over the years. I had a close relationship somewhat giving Q and them information. Yeah. That's kind of what I do as a service. First time I ever talking about that. Mm-hmm. But under the circumstances, it fits.
Yeah, that's understandable. Now, speaking of Quinn, by the way, it's AJC Falcons News Now. I want to show you what a couple guys said yesterday coming off the debacle that was Atlanta and Houston. Really some pretty pointed criticism, or I don't even know if it's criticism, it's just kind of frank talk that certainly doesn't make the Falcons defense look very good. Let me first of all start on the Houston sideline here. As quoted by a Houston Chronicle reporter, here's Kiki Katu, the Texans wide receiver. Here's his quote about Atlanta. He says, this is not good. We knew they were a pretty basic defense that wasn't going to do too much. They were going to keep running the same thing over and over. Once we kind of found out their kinks we just started capitalizing on our opportunities. Aaron Wilson, the Chronicle reporter, quotes Coutinho there on that. I mean, that's what we've seen with our own eyes, that Atlanta doesn't seem to be adjusting. Other teams just seem to be carving it up. But on a day when the opposition scored 50, to have one of the receivers speak about it in such blunt terms, that's salt in the wound for Falcons fans.
But guess what? The Falcon fans have been saying it for the last couple of days. The Falcon fans have been saying that. You guys have been saying that. I mean, they've been saying that for years. That's one of the biggest complaints I hear about. Well, Dan Quinn never blitz. They play that basic defense. Dan is who he is. That's how he won a Super Bowl in Seattle. It's still not going to change.
Let me show you one more of these coming from a guy that was on the Atlanta practice squad going back to 2018. It's Ron Parker, who spent a few years in Kansas City. He's back there now. Yeah. So he's getting asked, what do you think's up with my Falcons? And Ron's response is, the scheme, he says, the whole league knows how to attack the Atlanta defense, #soft zone. Now, I said before, Parker was on the Falcons practice squad, so maybe he's got a little bit of a gripe with Quinn.
He's probably a hater.
Yeah, you have to probably factor that into that. But too much soft zone from Atlanta in your mind?
No question. Atlanta's soft. Charmin soft. I mean, baby skin soft. I mean, the Falcons are playing cover 3. This is basically to sit back and you can take it. Other teams can throw all the under routes. Basically a lot of freedom to get the ball under the two deep safeties.
Right.
Man, the Falcons. Again, the Falcons haven't made adjustments. Dan Quinn, that's his fault, but he goes to a 3-4. So the Falcons, he's exactly right. There's nothing they can do. The players are handicapped too a little bit.
And this is one of those games. Go back to one of the first topics we brought up on the very first show we ever did. You came in and said, Atlanta seems to have shifted from a 4-3 to a 3-4, obviously with the mindset of knowing you're going to play guys like Deshaun Watson this year. And, I mean, Watson yesterday looked like he was still at Gainesville High School. I mean, he's just running around doing whatever he wanted to. And, after the game, Quinn was asked about, you kind of made some changes with a mindset towards going out and defending against Deshaun Watson. And not only did it not work, it didn't work at all. And Quinn was forced to kind of take the bullet for that a little bit. Here's Dan Quinn again.
Going into the game, we thought we had some chances to get after him, to hit him. When you don't get those done, you got to look hard at what we're doing and how to do it. So, results for us are not coming through like we'd like to on third down, especially in the shorter distances. And that's some of the things, just a few of the things that we'll obviously be working on this week.
Yeah, at this point in time, there's just no answers. I mean, just short yardage situations, whatever, just no answers.
Hey, remember this? I texted you and BJ the first game.
Yeah.
I said, are the Falcons running a 3-4? Because I didn't watch any of the preseason.
Right, of course.
I wanted to see what they did in the regular season. I hit you guys, are they running a 3-4? I was absolutely shocked.
Yeah.
It shocked me, not the fact that they were running 3-4, that Dan Quinn came to the point where he did not believe his base 4-man front could win. That was, to me, the first game, no matter what happened this year, there was some inconsistencies. There was some lack of confidence in what he had been running. And so for them to go to 3-4 from a 4-3, that's all he's ever ran, is absolutely crazy.
Yeah, let me get a few more comments here. Tim Hart says we need to figure something out. Just get it done. Rise up. James Bryant says we need Fulton Kuykendall, kind of a throwback to some of the great Falcons of the past there on that.
John Rady too.
George Polson on offense. We're going to hear from Matt Ryan in a moment, but George says here, too many short passes and they get mad yards off. He's actually talking about the defense, but basically the other side getting big yardage off that. But also on the offensive side of this as well, George's comment could work for that too, where you're having to force to dump off to Hooper over and over and over again because they're bracketing Julio, I guess. Now the touchdown throw to Ridley was amazing catch by Ridley and a beautiful throw, but just not enough of that dynamic passing stuff because these defenses are taking away Julio and Atlanta's letting them do it, I guess.
Hopkins yesterday he made a couple plays, but I always go back to Antonio Brown. I know people are tired of hearing his name, but he has been doubled the entire career in Pittsburgh. He made a living off of beating guys, but I'm tired of. So what is the deal? So for the rest of Julio's career, we're going to have to keep making excuses for Julio, an offensive coordinator? Because that's what it is. Oh, well, he's double teamed. Well, welcome to Jerry Rice's world. Welcome to Chris Carter's world.
I don't blame Julio.
I'm not blaming Julio.
I blame whatever Atlanta's doing offensively.
I understand that. Yeah. But at some point, they got to figure out whether it's the offensive coordinator. This is something where the organization has to step up. And I'm not blaming Julio.
Yeah.
But what do we do? What do they do? To me, the only thing you can do, now you got to get rid of Dirk Cutter. And I'm not even talking about Dan Quinn. So say Dan Quinn was able to make it here. You got to get rid of Dirk Cutter. He has shown that he cannot get him in the mix. But again, we talk about Kyle Shanahan, and you said it clear, he was the looked like he was the architect of what the Falcons did, maybe even overall the whole team. So I don't know, but if I'm a Falcon fan or if I'm even the Falcons, what are we supposed to see the next 4 years and say, well, Julio's double team? Get a coordinator that can get it done, Arthur Blank, whoever it is, Thomas Dimitroff. It's time to get somebody that can get Julio open, that can get creative, because it's sickening right now watching it.
And Vanessa in our Facebook comment section, echoing what so many people have said, on the list of criticisms, you got to talk about Devontae Freeman. Now, first of all, in recent years, any team that's paid up big for a running back has almost immediately regretted the decision. Almost immediately regretted the decision. But Devontae Freeman's not getting it done. She mentioned Tevin Coleman. You could say the same. The Freeman situation just sort of is what it is. Falcons spent kind of big money on this back and, to keep him here, and it's just not working out. He's not an impactful running back right now.
No, he's not, and he took advantage of that leverage, knew that it was his one shot to get a big deal. Smart by him and his agent. There was real, but then here's the thing that's a little bit disappointing though. The Falcons had leverage. They had another back behind them. You know what I'm saying? They had Tevin Coleman, so they really didn't have to do that.
He's the one they let go, of course.
Yeah, they let go, but Freeman took advantage of right now how the collective bargaining agreement is set up. You got to pay guys, and the Falcons took a risk.
Running back to me has become kind of a bargain basement type of thing. No disrespect to the guys doing it in the league, but draft them late, pay them little, and when they're ready to go make some money, shake their hand and go find somebody else to do the same thing for the same price.
There's rarely a Saquon Barkley out there. I'm 100%.
Well, honestly, Saquon Barkley is a good player, but here's a perfect example of this. As good as Saquon is when he's healthy, Giants drafting when they did was a dumb decision. As good as he is, top 3 pick, big time money on a running back, you're not winning a Super Bowl that way. You're not.
No, you're not. And that's the thing I always say about wide receivers. There haven't been many receivers that are catalysts for winning Super Bowls because they can't hold the ball. They only have to get the ball thrown to them. So it starts with that interior. It really does. And we're seeing it more and more now. Quarterback, number 1, pass rusher, offensive line, defensive line. It's just showing up.
Jason Dillard says, we lost his comment, but he was talking about how he's concerned that the Dan Quinn message probably is worn thin after a while. It happens for a lot of coaches. Because of Quinn and the overemphasis that he puts on emotion and being together in the brotherhood, my assumption is it's probably even more likely that a message like that wears thin over time. Would you probably agree with that when you are as intense as he is in terms of the brotherhood stuff?
Yeah, it runs out.
Brightest fires just burn out the quickest.
Yeah, I've been there. Grits Blitz, when Jerry Lambeau started losing. Yeah. Man, it was a Grits argument. Believe me, behind the scenes, guys are looking at each other. It's just the nature of it. I can listen to Ricardo Allen. I can hear some of their comments, watch how they talk. Everybody's not happy, but they're not pointing fingers publicly. but you definitely, I can tell you this right now, guys are looking at each other in that locker room with the side eye.
Jack Stroud wants to see the Falcons draft DeAndre Swift. I think he's going to be a good pro for somebody. Although, admittedly, you have to say the same thing about the Georgia guys that you do the other running backs. It's just a lot to put on on a running back in this league where the guys that seem to be doing the best, the organizations are doing it with the cheaper running backs. Maurice Dunn says this coach will still be in Atlanta no matter what. They're not going to fire him because he's two jobs to do, head coach and defensive coordinator. So, Maurice, here's the thing. I understand the frustration by the fact that it hasn't happened yet, and I do believe that it's time for fans themselves to be talking about who they want in place of Quinn, because I think eventually it's probably going to happen. However, the one thing that I'm going to defend the organization on here for a moment is I do think that Arthur Blank has shown a history of being interested in fans and being responsive to fans. Now, in terms of fixing the problems that fans have brought up, sometimes maybe it hasn't always worked out that way. But this is a guy that you have to say, this is not an absentee owner, right? This is a guy that you can find on the sidelines. This is a guy who spoke to Steve Hummer yesterday. There are plenty of owners. All these billionaire owners travel with personal security. If Arthur Blank had wanted to keep Steve Hummer away yesterday, keep him 100 yards away, he could have, not say one thing, and you wouldn't have any idea what Blank's thinking right now. But Blank gave, and we showed you two quotes, but the entire, as Chuck said, it's a pretty deeply reported column. Blank didn't have to do that. So while I'm not going to carry the water for the team in terms of the play on the field or maybe even some of the personnel decisions that have been made, that's criticism that'll stand on its own. In terms of Blank being responsive to fans, I actually think he's got a pretty good track record when it comes to that.
Well, I do too, and he's not trying to blow this thing up because remember, you don't want to come out and make this thing into a mess. So if I'm me personally, if I'm Arthur Blank, I'm not canning him unless they lose like the next 5-6 games.
Well, Arizona's legitimately terrible. It'd be hard.
Yeah.
It'd be hard to defend letting him fly back and coach the following. Even as tough as the stretch is with the two NFC West teams and the two division teams on the road, even as tough as that stretch is, you lose to a really bad Arizona team. It's hard to imagine you would keep your job beyond that. But, firing him yesterday would have made people feel better, but I'm not sure it makes the season go better.
It just blows it up.
Yeah.
See, my thing is this. I guess you call him just sitting there. He's kind of, no one knows exactly what's going to happen. But if I'm Arthur Blank, I'm being patient from the standpoint of I might wait till closer to the end of the season to drop the hammer on him because you'll still have time to find a good coach. You understand what I'm saying?
Right.
But if you do it right now, man, this season, these players start going sideways. The brotherhood gets real nasty.
Yeah.
You're going to start hearing players come out of their feelings. But Dan Quinn, I'll tell you this. Dan Quinn can't come back.
No, at this point in time, it's almost
he's lost it. The fans,
Yeah.
if Dan Quinn were to come back next year, it is what it is. If he were to say he would come back, it would be a catastrophic decision by Arthur Blank because the fans, he'd be getting booed.
Right.
It would be like that.
Well, you're really failing on three fronts here. In terms of a face of the organization, fans don't buy Quinn anymore. That's a long-term failing. As we just gave you a couple of examples around the league, the idea that Quinn's able to, his side of the ball where he's an expert defense, he's not scheming up effectively. That's strike two. And then when it comes to the motivational message, as one of our commenters mentioned a moment ago, that's likely now falling on deaf ears. So he's not a good face of the organization in terms of the fans wanting to rally around him. Doesn't seem to have schematic answers. And there's at least a chance that message to the players have worn stale. That's why you can't bring him back. Eventually, I think that Blank's going to do the right thing. It just becomes a matter of timing on this. And Blank to the AJC yesterday said the timing's not right. And I'm not going to squabble with all that much. Here's the frustrating thing. And Chuck, you're a good person to speak on this because just to be in the weeds here for a moment, your agent's Jimmy Sexton. Jimmy represents a lot of college coaches especially. Agents like that are really good at working back channels. Let me tell you how the next couple months are going to go for the Falcons, whether Quinn stays employed or not. This is obviously my opinion, but I think I'm probably right about this. There are going to be a lot of back channel discussions because you can't publicly reach out to Lincoln Riley. He's got a contract. He's employed by the Oklahoma Sooners. But there's obviously nothing that prevents any team from having the back channel discussion of, hey, if we did have a job come available, would you be interested in taking? And Riley's agent, it may be Jimmy Sexton, I don't know who his agent is, but he's going to have an agent. His agent's going to say, no, we only want the Dallas Cowboys job. At one point in time, there had been some rumors that Riley might have liked the Cowboys job, or no, he wants to stay at Oklahoma for X number of years, for the rest of his life, or whenever. He's got some reason why he's not ready to take the NFL job. But all that kind of stuff is going to be back channels. There are going to be a bunch of rumors out there in the national media, but half of those are just as likely to be right as wrong. But the frustrating thing for fans is the real action for the next couple of months is all back channel conversations. It's not going to be public. It's not going to be on the record. It's going to be happening in the rumor mill. It's going to be sort of tough to decipher of that what's true and what's not.
Well, we've heard a few times when they were negotiating with Julio, what did Thomas Dimitroff say? We have a great relationship with CAA and Jimmy Sexton.
Yeah.
We've heard it. Rich McKay. That's how, look, Rich McKay, that's how I first met Rich McKay, through Jimmy. So this is a long time. Again, I'm not saying that's going to happen.
Yeah.
But I will say that they have a great relationship. Arthur Blank even said it. I heard on the radio that they have a great relationship with CAA. And so they were confident that they were going to get Julio deal done. So, man, them backdoor deals, they already did their research, because when you deal with Jimmy, you got the big boss of bosses.
That's true. Keith McCann says if they lose next week to a rebuilding Arizona team, no way Blank keeps them. The defensive scheme is wrong for this current personnel. I think the defensive scheme is just wrong, period. But in terms of the kind of thing that you can't explain away, I mean, Arizona to me is bad enough that you can't explain that away. That that's the one that virtually from the get-go, given the fact that it is a new coach, given the fact that it is a brand new quarterback, and he can't see over his offensive lineman, and given all this kind of stuff, that's the one. That's the one that you couldn't explain away.
Yeah, you're right, and you couldn't explain that in the Falcons. When you look at Arizona rebuilding, new coach, new quarterback, and the Falcons lose this game, Arthur Blank, he would almost have to fire him. But really, when you just talked about wrong scheme.
Yeah.
See, to me, it's wrong players. The Philadelphia Eagles are running the exact same defense of the Atlanta Falcons, a base four-man front. They had 10 sacks yesterday. Brandon Graham had sacks. Derek Barnett had sacks.
Yeah.
To me, our personnel and drafting has been wrong. Simple as that.
Yeah.
I mean, we're running a 4-3. The scheme works when you got guys that can rush. Then you can play zones like Dan Quinn.
Yeah.
He drafted. They have the wrong guys for the 4-3. So it works for the right teams.
Brian Rogers, it should be pointed out in our Facebook comment section, disagrees with me. He says, no, Blank does need to do something, needs to do something about it fast in terms of what's going on here with Quinn. I thought Blank speaking publicly yesterday was an example of him doing something. I mean, that was something he didn't have to do, and he did more than just give a carefully worded statement. I mean, the best I could tell, I wasn't standing there when Hummer is with Blank, but the best I could tell, it's a fairly wide-ranging conversation. Now, if you say, well, I want Blank to sound more like the Deion Sanders clips we played at the beginning of the show. The fact of the matter is, when you're an ex-player and you don't work for the team anymore, you are just a little bit more free to say whatever you want to. Blank is going to have to choose his words a little bit more carefully, but honestly, he's pretty open. I mean, I didn't necessarily, read all the quotes from the show, but I mean, he admitted it's not good enough right now. I mean, and he admitted that his confidence is shaken. Leaving the door open for this team to play better at some point in time. If you're saying Arthur Blank needs to do something, well, yesterday he did do something. He spoke out about this. I mean, that for me is enough right now. If it's a loss to Arizona, if it's whatever over that, heading towards the bye week, at that point in time, it seems weird that you wouldn't just go ahead and make the move. But in terms of the faction of the fans who say Blank needs to do something, I thought yesterday he kind of did.
Well, I think he did too, and I think Arthur Blank basically said, hey, we just want you to make it respectable and don't embarrass us, and we'll let you finish out this season.
Yeah.
Now, on the other hand of the spectrum, I love me some Deion, and I got some memorabilia of Deion today, but it drives me crazy when former players at this point grandstand a little bit, this is my opinion, comes out and puts more pressure on Arthur Blank. So basically, Deion sort of shaped and manipulated. Not only did the fans already disappointed, Deion basically threw an arrow right in. He's added what? Fuel to the fire, in my opinion. Now, everybody know what's going on. You already know what's going on, but to me, I mean, I didn't really care for that because he said it a couple times, right?
Yeah.
So, but anyway, it is what it is, but Deion definitely didn't help the situation.
Real quickly before you hear from Matt Ryan, Tavares Sims says, Thomas Dimitroff has been the factor in drafting the last few years. Keep Quinn, get a GM that knows what he's doing. First of all, it's interesting here, Tavares back Quinn on that, but he does kind of point this back towards Thomas Dimitroff, and I definitely am of the belief that I'm not so sure that Dimitroff should have been safe when they fired Mike Smith, but the idea that somehow that he's the one that gets to make the evaluation on Dan Quinn's future, I don't believe that's the case at all. While you're talking about Dan Quinn's future, you got to be talking about Thomas Dimitroff in the same discussion.
Yeah, they're connected because my big thing is personnel. I mean, you've drafted some guys that are just average, but in all fairness to Thomas too, when you get the coach, they have tried to draft Dan Quinn guys.
Yeah.
Fast, smaller guys, but it ain't working. So both of them, to me, are a little bit responsible.
Vince Borges says, Blank won't announce a change until the replacements are found. We need two replacements just to finish the season. That's hard to do mid-season. Here's the thing, though. They got like 50 former head coaches on their staff. We were talking about Raheem Morris. I mean, that if you want an interim defensive coordinator, or if you want him to be interim head coach, Morris was former Tampa coach. Dirk Cutter's, I guess, been Tampa coach too. So you got the former coaches on your staff. I mean, I hate to say it this way, but if there was ever a ready-made interim staff, the Falcons had that coming into the season.
No, they definitely
I'm not
did.
saying that's why they brought these guys in, but, I mean, it would certainly be convenient.
Yeah, because they got a clock manager and everything. But,
By the way, where's the clock manager yesterday on the one short kickoff late in the game? Atlanta doesn't challenge this. This is another thing that drives you crazy. Now, listen, we got to go. It's like an hour on the air now. But Atlanta doesn't challenge what was ruled an out-of-bounds kick, but by rule, Dean Blandino said this on the TV broadcast.
that was a big play.
If Atlanta challenges that there, and that was 3:45, so Atlanta had the timeout to challenge, it would be their responsibility to do so. They probably would have gotten the football on defense at the 10-yard line.
Yeah, it would have made a big difference. Lots of things to talk about. It ain't gonna get no better. So I guess you said we gotta go.
Well, we got a little bit to do before we get there.
Okay.
Chuck's got a pretty cool piece of Falcons history we're going to show. Hold on. We'll let folks see that in a minute.
Okay.
We're also going to go over the scores from on Sunday as well. Let me hear a little bit of Matt Ryan. Let me set this one up before we do.
All right.
So Ryan has been maybe criticized in the past by some fans of not being – we talked about the emotion that Deion Sanders showed. Maybe Ryan has a history of not doing that kind of stuff. When he speaks to reporters, he's very buttoned up. He's very polished. And you don't really see the, get set type stuff that you sometimes maybe see from him in private with his team. He was asked yesterday about his emotion and when it is that he does choose to show that. I thought that Ryan gave a pretty introspective answer on that. Let's hear the Falcons quarterback for a moment.
I think if you ask my teammates, there's definitely times where I raise my voice. And so I just believe that those things are better handled in a locker room and together. I mean, it's part of being a team is being able to have honest conversations with each other. But that stays in there.
And then one more from him. He says that stays in the locker room, but the one thing he was willing to give us was just his overall feeling of disappointment about the fact that the changes Atlanta's trying to make week to week in practice, they're just not working on the field right now. More from Ryan in that regard.
I think there's a number of reasons why we haven't played as well as we have. But I think that's a good sentiment to have. I think everybody needs to look in the mirror and take ownership for what you're doing. And I think that's the best way for all of us collectively to be better if we improve individually. So I like that mindset is to be honest with yourself and to take a look at the things you're doing well, try and keep doing those, and the things that you're not doing as well, try and improve in those areas.
In the midst of a bad season, the franchise quarterback is not going to be impervious to criticism either. And Ryan came into yesterday's game with 7 turnovers. That sets him up for some of that kind of stuff. However, I still believe that Ryan's in the prime of his career for a few more years. He's obviously got receivers still in their prime, including Julio Jones we talked about a little earlier. That, to me, is still a part of what's right with the Atlanta organization. They've just got to find someone who can maximize that offense and be just good enough on defense. We had a commenter earlier saying Big 12. I think we're in a Big 12 version of the NFL now. Just be good enough on defense, but you can't squander what's left of Matt Ryan. That's what's at stake here. Ryan's too much of a gentleman to ever say that out loud, but deep down he's got to know that's true, that his final remaining prime years can't be squandered with the coaching staff that's kind of going around in circles.
Right. I don't need Matt Ryan to come and act a fool after the game. I mean, you say what you got to say, keep it in-house because you are the leader, but I know it wouldn't hurt his perception locally if you kind of came out one time, but that'd be being fake.
Yeah.
Who wants to be fake? Matt Ryan's being himself. I'm fine with that, and I do think he's an asset to the team, but he needs a team around him to be almost perfect to get us back to a Super Bowl or get in contention.
All right, real quickly, let's take a look at Week 5 scores around the NFL. Obviously, Atlanta with an eye on what's happening in the NFC South. It's spun up for next week, the Arizona Cardinals. First of all, pretty good game in London as the Raiders get a win over the Bears.
Just win, baby.
This Oakland team looks for real for right now. Same can be said for Carolina. I think holding off a good Jacksonville team, even though it was in your own stadium, I think that's a good job. To think they've done all this with the backup quarterback Kyle Allen playing in place of Cam Newton. Carolina's a good team right now. That was a good win yesterday. I sort of laughed at Arizona for not being good, but they do take care of another bad team yesterday and beating the Cincinnati Bengals, so give them credit for that. New Orleans, just keeps on winning. Very, very respectable what's happening there with the Saints, and keep an eye on Tampa there as well, playing well before you get to that game. Danny Dimes comes back down to earth. The whole Daniel, Jones thing. there was a lot of New York exaggeration on that.
Yeah, but
performance
Minnesota
with the
tough
quarterback.
team now.
Minnesota's good.
They're
Falcons
tough
know that. Jets get beaten up bad. That's one of the worst teams in the league. Baltimore, Pittsburgh, pretty good game there yesterday. Buffalo, for real, 14-7 over the Tennessee Titans.
Yeah.
AFC East, pretty lousy division, but Buffalo threatened New England the other day, and they've won. Other than that,
I like
Bills,
those
pretty
Bills.
good team right now. Washington's an embarrassment. They actually became the first team to fire a coach this year, firing their coach Jay Gruden. Denver and the Chargers. A lot of Atlantans probably weren't watching that at the same time the Braves game was. Green Bay, Dallas was a good game yesterday, although a little bit of a shaky performance by the Cowboys. Green Bay's one of the better teams in the NFC right now.
I like Green Bay. Great defense.
And then a little bit of an upset. Actually, not even a little bit of an upset. Colts getting the win against Kansas City on Sunday Night Football. And then tonight, Cleveland-San Francisco is a pretty good Monday game.
Yeah, I like that. It's going to be interesting.
All right, so it's AJC Falcons News Now. We are sponsored by Miller Lite, and want to let you know that we'll be doing the same show again this Friday at 1 p.m. So for more on kind of whatever's coming out of the Falcons organization this week and the future of Dan Quinn, the future of Thomas Dimitroff, whatever Arthur Blank's feelings on that might be, we'll be here to cover it for you this Friday, 1 p.m. on AJC Falcons News Now. And speaking of that, go to subscribe.ajc.com/Falcons News Now. Become an AJC subscriber, and as a special thank you to you, you get this really cool official Atlanta Falcons branded cooler. Of course, the AJC, proud partners of the Atlanta Falcons. Now, we're talking about Deion Sanders off the top of our program, and, well, as luck would have it, also a pretty cool piece of Falcons history that also involves Deion Sanders. My favorite part of the show is when Chuck breaks out the memorabilia here.
Yeah, so I was over at Deion's house one day, sitting there, and I was in his closet. He had about 10,000 pair of shoes.
Look at this thing.
And they had just came out with the Diamond Turf. And this was like the first version of the Diamond Turf shoe that he wore.
That's really nice.
When he played baseball, you know, the baseball, football, one of the first cross trainers out.
That's nice.
Yep, so I was just sitting there, I say, hey, Prime, bro, let me get an autograph, man. These might be worth something one day. So I got these. Nike made them his autograph.
So you can't, can I hold it for a second? So you can't see this too good because it's written in black, but a little silver Sharpie right here, you can kind of see it right there, Primetime 21.
That's how he signed it, Primetime.
I love that. I love that.
Primetime, that was a good guy.
That's Atlanta sports history right there.
Yeah, so I said.
By the way, really good job of the Falcons. I was at the game against Tennessee. As a part of their pregame video package, they showed Deion's first punt return touchdown. Larry Munson's radio call of that. Munson was doing Falcons games at the time. They kind of blared that as a part of the pregame video. Pretty good job of the Falcons, harkening back to their history as the NFL honors 100 seasons of the National Football League. Chuck, that's happy times. Not as happy.
Good times.
Not as happy for the Falcons
Hold up,
right now.
I wasn't on the team when he wore these.
Yeah.
It was very happy times because we was like Tennessee back-to-back champs back then. SEC. It was good times. I was in college, but the next year we were absolutely sorry my rookie year. But so, you know.
that's a really cool part of Atlanta sports history right
Yeah,
there. Chuck,
prime
thanks
time.
for good stuff here today. Y'all, we'll see you back here Friday at 1 p.m. for AJC Falcons News Now, sponsored by Miller Lite. Whatever happens, we'll talk about it with you. We'll try our best to keep it real. We appreciate you being here, and we'll look forward to speaking to you again next time.